Hi, I'm Alex.
And I'm Eddie.
Welcome to the 19th episode of Catch 52, a politics podcast brought to you by WDSR, Duquesne Student Radio.
We are now 33 weeks away from Inauguration Day 2021, but this week we will not be talking about the election.
Yes, like other radio shows across the country, but a few days late because we only record once a week, Catch 52 is going to be postponing our weekly electoral programming to talk about, the important things that are happening in our country right now, because it's everybody's duty to talk about them. And so that's what we're going to do.
Yeah. So as we had said earlier, we are a Duquesne student radio show. We are run by Duquesne University, and we are marketed primarily towards Duquesne University. Now, throughout the week, Alec and I were talking. President Ken Gormley of Duquesne released a statement, I guess you could call it, on the protests, and it is bad. It's bad, and so we feel the need that we need to talk about this. This is a very pressing issue. This is civil rights, and Duquesne is being neutral on civil rights.
Anyway, let's get into it. It's okay.
Did we just read the whole letter? Honestly,
I mean, yeah, we can read the whole letter. So let's go through it like section by section.
Yeah.
And we will explain why this letter is sort of a masterclass in what not to do with your platform.
Yes. Okay. So to begin, dear members of the Duquesne University community, after a very difficult weekend for so many in both our city and across the nation. Okay, first off.
Oh, we're stopping already.
And then he says, I wanted to write and share some thoughts. Okay. A very difficult weekend is like very, very cushiony way of saying police murder of an innocent black man. But yeah, so right off the bat, a very, very polite way of talking about police brutality.
Exactly. And are we nitpicking? Yes. And guess what? We're going to continue to nitpick because that's what we're going to do.
As we should. Now, although it's impossible to heal wounds so flesh, it is nonetheless important to renew our pledge to stand up against the discriminatory conduct and injustice wherever we see it on display. Okay, good. So we should expect to see Duquesne to stand up to the discriminatory conduct and injustice. So maybe they'll mention police brutality. Maybe they'll say Black Lives Matter. Who knows? Let's find out. As institutions of higher education, we have a special duty to seek a pathway forward that is illuminated by an unyielding commitment to equality, mutual respect, and caring for all human beings. All right, so again, like commitment to equality, like support the civil rights movement that's happening right now in America. That's what it's leading to. Okay.
Caring for all human beings. We're talking about this it starts to take a little bit more of a Christian tone, but that's Duquesne. Stay on brand.
So already our lives have been turned upside down by the COVID-19 pandemic. Now that stress is magnified 100-fold by the recent unspeakable tragedy involving the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis.
It's not stress, okay? It's
I was stressed during finals week. My experience in finals week is nothing compared to the struggle that Black Americans have had to go through for 400 years. Or 401 years now, because it is now 1619 was the first year that Black people came to America as slaves. So 401 years of oppression.
Happy anniversary.
That's not stress. That is racism.
Yes.
Like that.
It's a lot more than just racism. It's what is it? Is it stress or human rights violations?
Yeah. Like, so if you are going to use a word to equivocate the COVID-19 pandemic with George Floyd, stress is not the word. Maybe grief would be better. Like stress. And then also the unspeakable tragedy involving the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis. So a little bit of a spoiler. They do not mention the word police in this entire letter.
They also don't mention the word murder in this entire letter. Or homicide. Or manslaughter.
That was the first paragraph. And it started off all right. The first sentence was not great, but then afterwards they're saying, we need to stand up to discrimination. We need to fight for equality, like all this stuff that's very good. and then they call it the unspeakable tragedy involving the death of George Floyd.
Can I also just say something real quick? Because Duquesne has taught me so well when it comes to the use of syntax. Particularly the professors that taught me well were adjuncts and not members of the union. Just to, get a little, let's be spicy.
Slight side note: Duquesne is probably going to appeal up to the Supreme Court.
Oh yeah, they will,
because the union is probably going to. So Duquesne won't let its adjuncts unionize because then they'd have to pay them too much health care. Very very great Christian benefits going on at Duquesne here for their people. Really respect for all human beings. Mutual respect and caring for all human beings, as they say. But
anyway, one of my adjunct English professors who taught me so well about syntax and deserves to be, commended properly and compensated for teaching me so well about syntax, has a particular thing to say regarding the word, particularly the adjective unspeakable when it comes to tragedies. Tragedies deserve to be spoken about. They deserve to have a light shown upon them, because if you shine a light upon tragedies, it draws attention to it. And maybe if people have it just somewhere in the back of their minds, it won't happen again. So in that way, no tragedy is unspeakable. Guess what? If the Holocaust is unspeakable, then we don't ever talk about it. So then if we don't ever talk about it, we'll forget about it.
Yeah, it's not an unspeakable tragedy. It's a murder. It's a tragedy, but it's a tragedy. It's speakable. Ready? George Floyd was murdered. There, I spoke it.
You've spoken it, but it already existed.
Yeah. So the next paragraph, that inexcusable act has now produced unintended consequences.
You know what else produced unintended consequences? Implicit biases, systemic racism.
Yeah. 400 years of discrimination against African Americans.
The use of force model. We can go on.
That inexcusable act has now produced unintended consequences.
Hey guys, you know what? You know who is responsible for setting this forest on fire? Not the people who cleared all the brush and cut down all the trees.
It's the match.
It's the match.
So
the match guys, whoever lit the match, it's their fault. It's not the loggers who cleared.
I know we're supposed to keep language to a minimum here, but this inexcusable act has now produced unintended consequences. No shit. Of course, there are consequences for a police murder of an unarmed black man. Anyways, peaceful protest and demonstration expressing the collective despair and frustration of communities that have been racked by such injustices for far too long have now exploded into destruction and violence.
Why do you have to call them communities? The white community has not been racked by such injustices. No. It's specifically the black community. You have to call it out. Label things for what it is. Use direct language.
And also, you are saying that peaceful protests and demonstrations have now exploded into destruction and violence, which is by many accounts not the case. If you look at you can see plenty of videos, they won't show it on mainstream media, but you see it on social media where it's people that sneak up behind the protest hours later, light stuff on fire, break buildings, loot. In most cases, the protesters and the demonstrators are not the ones causing destruction and violence. To say that those exploded into destruction and violence is saying that the people who are being targeted for racism are the cause of racism. It's victim shame. That's what it is. It's victim shame.
Exactly. The other thing is so it's on top of the victim shaming though. It also says that this is a natural outgrowth, right?
Yeah.
We understand that the sentence construction specifically by saying that, what once started out as a good and positive thing now has turned into something else. You are, by your sentence construction, implying implicitly that the thing that it has become is a bad thing. And so you're misrepresenting the reality of the situation on multiple levels.
Mm-hmm. That sentence could have been phrased, peaceful protests and demonstrations have began, which express the despair and frustration of the black community, which has been racked by such injustices for far too long. That would have been an amazing sentence.
Exactly.
But instead, you have to, first off, say that it's exploded into destruction and violence, which, again, it hasn't. And two, the collective despair and frustration of communities. This is This is specifically about, yes, all police brutality is bad and people are protesting that, but specifically police brutality against Black people.
Yes.
Like, specifically against Black people. Anyways.
There's a reason that not a lot of people are talking about the one time when that Black police officer killed a white woman in Michigan. That's not what this is about. Sure, that's a bad thing. And it was an example of like, okay, the use of force was escalated way too quickly and the police officer acted, way out of line. But that's not what this is about, because it's about police excessively increasing the use of force against African American communities, against unarmed Black men.
Yeah. So this next sentence, I think, is probably one of the worst ones in the entire letter. Although the violence that occurred in our city and elsewhere over the weekend dishonors the true motives of the demonstrators and George Floyd's memory, we must nonetheless hear and respond to the expressions of pain and the quest for justice expressed. So I'm sorry that we're sighing after literally every single sentence, but this is...
Can you blame us?
We must nonetheless... So let's simplify this sentence. There's violence, and it's not right, but we need to hear them out. It's demeaning. It is demeaning. We must nonetheless hear and respond to the expressions of pain and the quest for justice expressed. Okay, if you want to respond to the quest for justice expressed, how about you, to quote yourself 2 paragraphs earlier, stand up to discriminatory conduct and injustice whenever you see it on display. How about you do that?
Call it out.
How about you say Black Lives Matter? How about you say the word police in your entire letter? How about that, Ken? Mr. Gormley, President Gormley, Dr. Gormley.
Well, I mean, in fairness, he doesn't have a lot of experience with public speaking. He's never been in a courtroom.
He's been in the courtroom as a defendant. No words are sufficient to take away the pain and hurt caused by the senseless act of violence and utter disrespect for human life that caused George Floyd's death. That's a pretty good, that one is a well-written sentence. There's nothing that you can say that, as a straight white rich man, there's nothing that you can say that will take away from this, and that's fair, but you can help mitigate the damage in the future by speaking out against injustice whenever you see it. So let's see how he speaks out against injustice. Yet it is important to join hands as a university family and heal together by reaffirming our collective promise to call out and eliminate discrimination in our midst, root and branch.
Well, you're not even calling it out. You're not saying police. You're not saying Black Lives Matter.
Yeah,
you're
so
not saying any of the realities that surround the situation. It's our job to call it out, and you don't call it out.
Yeah.
I guess you're calling out yourselves. And
you are reaffirming your promise to call it out, but you're breaking your promise as you say it. The promise is being broken as it's being said, because you are not calling it out, and you've called it the senseless death, the unintended, the unspeakable tragedy. At least call it a police-involved killing. You don't, if you're trying to stay, neutral in the instance of law, and you don't want to call it, a murder until he's been convicted, call it a police-involved killing or the police killing, because there was a police and he killed that man. Objectively, not speaking from a law perspective, a policeman killed George Floyd. So call out the discrimination in which police kill Black men at a higher rate than white men. Now, to that end, I share with you a prayer sent to me this morning by Father Jim McCloskey, a Spirit and priest who serves as one of my senior advisors. Great priest. That prayer, offered by the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops at a conference dealing with the corrosive effects of racism, is more relevant today than ever. It calls all of us to awaken ourselves to injustice and commit ourselves to acts that are important to our fellow people in order to reverse the wrongdoing and harsh treatment that have for too long sustained our American society.
Before we read this prayer, can I just say that one of the things that I have learned at Duquesne through my many, many philosophy classes is that it's generally considered impossible to reverse wrongdoing. You don't make it, once something has been done, it's done. So it's not about pasting over 400 years of racial prejudice, slavery, that have been perpetrated against African Americans living here. It's not about pasting over that. It's about acknowledging that history, accepting and saying that it was wrong. I don't know why you'd have to accept it, but saying that it is wrong over and over and over again, and then moving forward and trying to build a society that does not do the same things that the past society did, so that 400 years after you are bringing black people over from Africa to have them pick cotton, there are black people who are contributing members to society just as much as everyone else is, and that don't have to walk out their door every morning with the fear of getting shot by a dude who's been training for 6 months and got a little badge on right above his left pec.
And let me also just say the extreme hypocrisy in quoting the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops. They are actually a fairly liberal organization in terms of Christians and especially Catholics. They have come out, against Trump on many issues, including, the caging of illegal immigrants, and while not explicitly, have come out in favor of the civil rights protests in the past years. They have published people in favor of Black Lives Matter. So this is something that the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops has spoken out on before and has explicitly called by name. But Duquesne won't, but they'll offer a prayer that they said.
Lots of prayers, guys. It always works.
Yeah. So this prayer is, a pretty generic prayer. It's not anything specific, but it's a, anti-racism prayer. So that's good. It's, "Wake me up, Lord, so that the evil of racism finds no home within me. Keep watch over my heart, Lord, and remove from me any barriers to your grace that may oppress and offend my brothers and sisters. Fill my spirit, Lord, so that I may give services of justice and peace. Clear my mind, Lord, and use it for your glory. And finally, remind us, Lord, that you said, 'Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God.'" Okay, so let's break down how using this prayer is directly hypocritical to Ken's statement. Remove me from any barriers to your grace. It seems like President Gormley here has many barriers that may oppress and offend his brothers and sisters in the Duquesne community. One of them is the fear of sounding too politically correct. In this instance, against people who might swing more conservative. Because not calling it Black Lives Matter, not mentioning police, seems very, very, very much like you're just trying to make sure that no one gets angry about this statement instead of actually speaking out against the injustices that are happening and calling out racism and discrimination in your midst.
There you go.
Fill my spirit, Lord, so I may give services of justice and peace.
Okay, so your ability to give services of justice and peace. Mm-hmm. Okay, so what does that sound like? How about using your platform, right? So that I may give services of justice and peace. So if you're the university president, the service that you give is leadership, right? Mm-hmm. You lead the university. These are times when presidents and leaders are supposed to step up. And we've seen what happens when that doesn't happen. So has President Gormley stepped up? Has President Gormley given a definitive tone and addressed the root of all of the issues that this letter was attempting to call out? Clearly not. Why? Because he hasn't said any of them. As we've been saying this whole time, he has not called out any of the symptoms. He has not called out any of the causes. And so by saying that I will give, by asking the Lord to fill his spirit with strength so that he may give services of justice and peace, he is inherently not giving those services. And I also want to talk about the first sentence because it's such a cop-out.
Yeah.
The evil of racism, wake me up, Lord, so that the evil of racism finds no home within me. Said another way, make me woke, Twitter, so that I am not racist anymore. Please?
Yeah, it's and if you're going to quote the Beatitudes at the end for blessed are the peacemakers, how about you quote the other one that says, blessed are they who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Let's advocate for the people who are hungering and thirsting for righteousness, not just the people that are trying to make peace. Or how about the one that says, blessed are they who are persecuted for the sake of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. That's the last one. That's the most important one.
So let's talk about the peacemaker, shall we? Because there seems to be an idea that there is oh well, like, you know, you have the police, and then you have the Black Lives Matter people, and then we want to, you know, come
We
together in the middle for
compromise.
right? Let's talk about the peacemakers, right? Really, in this
Yeah.
situation, how blessed are they? Because
So
honestly,
yeah.
how blessed were the Swiss in World War II? Huh?
Generally, I believe that compromise is a great thing. I think that, you know, being able to come together and work together to move our society forward is great. But in terms of civil rights and human rights, there is no compromise.
Because it's black and white.
There,
Not
okay,
trying to like paint a picture with that.
It is a dichotomy. Either you are in favor of civil rights, or you are. So there are three positions outward positions. The outward positions are: you are in favor of civil rights, you are neutral on civil rights, or you are against civil rights. Now, neutrality in this instance, accurately depicted by my middle finger, neutrality in this instance is supporting the status quo. You are saying, I think it's fine as it is, because if you did not think it was fine as it is, you would be supporting the changes. So if you are not supporting the changes, you are supporting the people that say no civil rights. So either you are in favor of the Black Lives Matter movement, or you are opposed to the civil rights movement that the Black Lives Matter movement is a part of.
Hang on. I can be neutral because black people do have civil rights. Black people didn't used to be able to vote. Black people didn't even count as a whole person. So black people can vote now. They count as a whole person
I mean, like,
now.
yes, but like these
the three amendments. So they have equal rights. So therefore, because black people have equal rights, I can be neutral in the status quo, because currently the status quo is not racist.
But if you look at the statistics, African American men are jailed, prosecuted, and more likely to just be lower income than white people in huge numbers. I think it's like 2 or 3 times more likely. If you are just born as a black person in America, you are 2 or 3 times more likely to be in the bottom 25% of income earners. We don't live in an equal society, and it's
we never
unjust
have
to pretend like we do.
So that's why the neutral ground. Because if you're at the neutral ground, you're saying if you're in the neutral ground, you're saying one of two things. Either number one, I don't care about civil rights regardless of the status of civil rights in this country.
Mm-hmm.
So in which case, you're on the side that's against civil rights. So then don't even call yourself neutral. You're just trying to hide it because you know implicitly that it's wrong, but you don't want to say it. Number two is the status quo is not racist. I am for civil rights, but the status quo is not racist. And in which case, educate yourself.
Yeah, and like I don't remember her name, but there's a social scientist, a clip of her going around, and basically she was, you know, lecturing in front of a crowd of majority white people, and she said, "Raise your hand if you'd like to be a black person in America." And like no one raised their hand, because you know, even if you don't, you know, consciously think about it, subconsciously you know that there is discrimination. You know that there is, and it's ignorant to say otherwise. When the facts say, like, you know, Republicans, especially young Republicans now, love talking about, you know, facts matter more than feelings. So let's talk about these facts that show that there are discriminatory practices still in America. Even if they are not explicit policies, there is an implicit enforcement of those policies that is done in a racist manner.
Implicit biases are hard to root out.
Yeah.
Of course, like, we are born with them. They are ingrained into us. And by us, I literally mean us.
Yeah. We have them. Yeah.
We have them.
It's ignorant to say that we don't. We have implicit biases. We're not absolving ourselves in this situation, but it's something we are working to correct.
You work to correct. You acknowledge it. You try to root it out of the back of your mind. But guess what? The back of your mind is something where it's really hard to root things out of. So, like, for example, because this is really worth saying, when I get off the bus, after Chinese class, or if I'm at CMU and I'm staying late and I'm getting off the bus back from going through the Hill District on the public bus, I feel safe on the bus. I'm not worrying about that. But the bus stop that I get off at is right across from Ace's Lounge. You know what I'm talking about. And again, this is, number one, me saying this from a position of white privilege, and number two, saying this from the position of somebody who has implicit biases. Because guess what? I don't know what goes on at that lounge. I don't know any of those people. But when I look at that lounge, I see a lot of African American people who are working class, who they as a white person, I have been, groomed, trained by society to look at the people who are in that lounge and saying they are sketchy.
Yeah.
And so then that inspires a sort of sense of primal fear within me that makes me walk faster. That's what that is.
Even if you just walk downtown, there's the area by the 7-Eleven and the CVS on Forbes Avenue, where there's there are typically 2 or 3 African-American homeless people there.
Right.
They are, that's a kind of double implicit bias that a lot of Americans have, that homeless people are dangerous, first off, and that second off, that Black Americans are dangerous. And so, that's something that I'm very much not proud of it. It disgusts me whenever I do, but I my heart is like, for a second, and then I'm like,
exactly.
Wait a minute, no, there's no reason for me to be afraid. I have never even been looked at as I'm walking down this street. It's like,
but it jumps, it's something that you yourself can't control, because it has been ingrained in you for decades, and that is the root of these problems. We've only been on this earth for 20 years. Imagine how ingrained it is for people who've been on this earth for 40, 50, 60 years. Especially, that's the kind of problem.
Especially the people who are, on earth for 70 years and make up a majority of our population of elected officials. So, and also there's been a lot of talk about MLK recently, and saying, MLK wouldn't have supported this. Well, first off, he said riots are the voice of the unheard, or something along there, to paraphrase him. I'm not going to pretend
MLK, the third tweet that's been going viral.
I'm not going to,
my father said,
pretend to speak like MLK. But the other quote that he said is that the most dangerous person in America in terms of the civil rights fight is not the racist, but the white moderate.
Oof. That is the sentence that there's a lot of people who don't want to hear that, because
if there is a white moderate quoting MLK, that is hypocritical. If there is a white moderate calling for peace and calling for an end to the explosion into destruction and violence, that is hypocritical, President Gormley. Now, to continue on from the prayer, I share this prayer not only to bring you comfort, but to inspire all of us to remove barriers to justice, to fill our hearts with compassion, and to commit ourselves with all of the power to command at our command to becoming the peacemakers.
All right, let's just take a breath here.
Something about it, President Gormley. If you are going to call for peace and call for compassion and call for justice, do something about it. At the very least, we have a little bit of money. You could donate some to maybe the Hill District, or actually, I have an even better idea that we'll get to fairly shortly.
Let's step back from this a little bit, because we've been rambling really hard about all this stuff. I'm going to pull one thing out of it, our discussion, that the dangers of the white moderate and the blessedness of being a peacemaker, and the Gorm's desire, President Gormley, his desire, to commit the Duquesne community with all the power at our command to becoming the peacemakers.
Yeah.
The illusion between, I'm drawing an illusion right now between the white moderate and this notion of the peacemaker, because what is there to make peace with, right? If you have an oppressor and you have the oppressed, there is no peace between them. But what if the oppressor realizes that they're wrong? Then the oppressor comes to peace. Yeah, then the oppressed win. That is overthrowing.
There are only 2 versions of peace in terms of an oppressed and an oppressor. The first one is maintaining the status quo, which we've mentioned, or the second one is supporting the people who are fighting for justice. So let's read through this a little bit and not pause as much, since we are, almost 40 minutes in now.
Are we really? Good grief.
Yeah. For all of Duquesne's 142-year history, we have sought as a university to underscore the importance of learning, to walk with others, and to know them and hear their stories, struggles, and aspirations. We do so in the neighborhoods near our campus and locations around the world. We've mentioned a few times, Duquesne is right by the Hill District, where pretty much all of Pittsburgh history is centered around screwing over the Black population there. It's a predominantly black neighborhood, and it has been more than any other community in Pittsburgh disenfranchised by urban expansion and
Redlining, gentrification.
The PPG Paints Arena.
Oh boy.
They built the Civic Arena by tearing down a bunch of houses in the Hill District, displaced a couple thousand people, and said, "Oh yeah, we'll build some more homes." Built maybe like a fifth of the homes they needed, and told the other ones to figure it out. And then when the Civic Arena got too old, they tore down even more houses right next to the Civic Arena to buy a new arena, and in that old space have a parking lot and not affordable housing. So stuff like that continuously. So now let's talk about the Hill District, because he says in his letter, one of our most famous local residents, Pittsburgh-born playwright August Wilson, who grew up in the Hill District near our campus, has inspired our own students and faculty, wrote a statement in the New York Times in 2000 that was tragically prescient.
Why are you calling out a statement that was written in 2000? I understand that you can have the same amount of clairvoyance on systemic racism in 2000 as you do in 2020. But come on, if you're a Duquesne student, you know the meme of August Wilson. August Wilson is it, and it shouldn't be. August Wilson shouldn't be a motif of the Duquesne experience, because there were plenty of famous local residents that have had a significant impact upon the city's development and Duquesne's development. It just so happens that August Wilson is the one that Duquesne has clung to like a white person clings to their one black friend.
August Wilson is Duquesne's token black friend. I mean, if you look at Duquesne's social justice projects, a lot of them are working at the August Wilson House, which is a good thing. But
yeah,
we use August Wilson as our no, we respect diversity in opinions and diversity in cultures. Like, we like August Wilson. It's very much like, oh no, I love the black community. I listen to hip hop all the time. Like, it's the same thing. But anyways, let's skip over to the call to action here.
Yes.
As he says, the call to action starts at home within our own community. Please be open to talking with one another, to hearing one another, and being patient and receptive with what is said. Okay.
Yeah, let's be receptive to
President Gormley. We hope that you are hearing us. We hope that you are open to talking with us. We would love to talk to you about the Black Lives Matter movement. We would love to hear from you that Black Lives Matter.
And we will promptly direct you to people who are much more qualified to talk about this than we are. Mm-hmm. Perhaps people who wrote a statement that actually addresses the situation.
Before we get to that, let's finish off this call to action.
All right.
Know that we have resources on campus, as well as through the Student Center for Student Wellbeing, Campus Ministry, Counseling Services, and the Office of Diversity and Inclusion. Our many faculty and staff, too, are here to serve each student and to assist one another. While ours are ongoing discussion, those discussions must help us move forward towards helpful actions. Regardless of your faith background, the entreaty and the prayer sent to me by Father McCloskey above is urgently important at this moment. It is not only important to honor and seek justice for George Floyd and his family, but also to challenge ourselves as individuals and as members of the Duquesne community to serve the noble, pressing work of justice. The only thing that they commit themselves to is having resources on campus. Campus is closed. No one can get on campus.
I mean, hey, real talk. I think they've canceled the Gifts and Spirit and Division program, so we're not even giving resources towards people who might not otherwise have access to them. I'm not going to go into it, but basically, it's a tutoring center that offers kids who might not get into college a chance to get into college.
Duquesne is doing nothing. This is all lip service. They say, let's work towards justice about 4 times, and they never commit to anything to work towards justice other than having resources that they already have. They are doing
appropriating the language of justice.
Yeah. So that's that letter.
I want to go back to it.
Yeah.
What's the line that we're looking for? The call to action. Please be open to hearing one another, being patient and receptive to what is said. So let's listen to one another. Let's promote one another. Let's promote things worth promoting, which is why we're now going to read the letter that should be promoted. And the person who wrote this letter, I mean, it's such a good letter that honestly, I'm assuming multiple people had a hand in at least editing it. Maybe those are the people who President Gormley should be talking, hearing, and being patient and receptive with, because clearly they had no input on this monstrosity. And so this is the kind of letter that hopefully most university presidents, although honestly we know that not too many of them are putting out things like this. This is the letter that we're now going to read by the Black Student Union that we hope to see in the future.
Yeah. So June 1st, 2020. May 25th, 2020, George Floyd, an unarmed black male, died in Minnesota while in police custody. Derek Chauvin, a white male and former Minneapolis police officer, caused Floyd's death as he knelt down on his neck for approximately 8 minutes and 46 seconds. Approximately 2 minutes and 53 seconds of that time was after Floyd became unresponsive, and bystanders joined Floyd in repeatedly telling officers that he could not breathe prior to. Officers Tuo Tao, J. Alexander Cooing, and Thomas K. Lane also participated in the arrest. Cooing had held Floyd's back. Lane held his legs as Tao stood there watching. That is how you start off the letter. I mean,
yeah, you know why? That's how you start off a letter? Because when you read that paragraph, it sends like a ripple up your spine.
Yeah. I mean, you are doing exactly what President Gormley refrained to do and calling the crime what it is. Obviously, we are not, I'm not going to send any corrections to the Black Student Union because that is nowhere near my place. But this should have been the university's response. That's how well this was written. We don't necessarily have the time to read all of it, but the specific paragraph that's amazing right here.
Yes.
Last night, President Gormley sent an incredibly dull email regarding the events in Pittsburgh and completely avoided the injustices faced by the Black community worldwide. He simply stated how Floyd's killing was sad, it was, quote, a difficult situation, and to keep them in our prayers. His email also implied that many people were concerned about Duquesne's physical property blocks away, as innocent bystanders were subject to tear gas, rubber bullets, and all because others came to promote their own personal agendas and hijack a peaceful protest. Where's the concern for your Black students right now?
Damn.
As a Black male, an alumnus, and a current graduate student of Duquesne, I am disappointed. I'm not surprised, but just disappointed. A campus that serves God by serving students communicated by not communicating at all. It was my hope that during a time like this, I can feel supported by Duquesne, and I did not feel that in the slightest bit. A school founded on, quote, maintaining an ecumenical atmosphere open to diversity and attentiveness to global concerns did not live up to that standard, as they lacked any and all initiatives surrounding this manner. Yes. And then their final paragraph. In a world where Black lives currently don't matter and we have to fight for equal opportunity, it would be nice to be supported by Duquesne as a whole and not just the office designated to cater to us. ODI doesn't. The Office of Diversity and Inclusion does enough. Duquesne needs to do more by its minority students and its staff members. Signed respectively with Power, Darian D. Reynolds, President Black Student Union.
Oh my gosh. Oh.
Perfect. I mean, that says in 2 sentences what we've said in 40 minutes. That, like, yeah. President Gormley's email avoided any attempts at justice while calling for justice. And what they do is they actually quote Duquesne's mission statement, which is let's just
it's like the piece de la resistance right there.
Let's
whenever you can quote a mission statement back at a person.
Duquesne University of the Holy Spirit is a Catholic university founded by members of the Congregation of the Holy Spirit, the Spiritans, and sustained through a partnership of laity and religious. Duquesne serves God by serving students through commitment to excellence in liberal and professional education, through profound concern for moral and spiritual values, and through the maintenance of an ecumenical atmosphere open to diversity, and through service to the church, community, nation, and the world.
Can I just say for the record, you read that off of your orientation note card, which is incredibly impressive.
It's my bookmark. But anyways, yeah, so Duquesne serving God by serving students. As the Black Student Union is attesting, they do not believe that President Gormley is accurately serving them or at all serving them. And then also does not have necessarily or is not showing a profound concern for moral or spiritual values, and is not really opening an atmosphere open to diversity, and is not serving the church, community, nation, or the world. So his inaction is directly going against the entirety of the Duquesne student mission state or the Duquesne University mission statement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just it hits you. It hits you in a way that a statement is supposed to hit you. It tells it, at the risk of falling into rhetoric, it tells it like it is.
Yeah.
It is a statement that does from it. This is what a president is supposed to do. This is what leaders are supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
In times of crisis, leaders are supposed to lead. They're not supposed to punt decisions and saying that we already have the resources to address this. Yeah. Leaders are supposed to say, they're supposed to call out the problem, and they are going to explain to the people whom they are duty bound to lead what they are going to do about the problem in the present and in the future. Because this isn't just about solving a situation, it's about fixing a system. And clearly, this is not a problem that President Gormley understands. And clearly, as we have explained this whole time, we wanted to finish the episode because we've been criticizing this whole time. Let's finish it off with something a little bit more constructive. Because it's been this whole situation, even as you are righteously outraged, and even as whether you're signing petitions, whether you're protesting, whether you're donating, whether you are trying to inform and educate those who may not have, who may have actively fail to inform themselves, or people who are, I know people who I'm friends with who are just now sort of coming around to the realization of everything that we've talked about.
Yeah. And that's good. That's good.
First of all, we want to say that's good.
Yeah.
It's late, but it's good, because somebody who is waking up to the realities of systemic racism now is better than somebody who never wakes up to those realities at all. Mm-hmm. So those are all good things, but I know for me personally, I'm always left with a sense of like, isn't there something more that I can do? What is something I can do to try and be constructive as somebody who is not a person of color, as somebody who is not oppressed, but as somebody who, either like lacks resources in my time or lacks resources of money? Like, what can I personally do?
So let's just start off by saying Duquesne University especially is in a position of very, very high privilege. We are an 80% white school. We are a private university that costs $50,000 a year to attend. Typically about 20% of students have their need fully met. So that's, 80% of students who are going into debt to go to this university. And, so the people that are going predominantly, not entirely, are rich white kids. We embody privilege. I mean, we own one of Pittsburgh's 5 downtown neighborhoods, pretty much. The 5 downtown neighborhoods are the Federal Triangle, the Strip District, the Cultural District, the Hill District, and the Bluff. But the Bluff is like 80% of Duquesne, is just like 80% of the Bluff is Duquesne's campus, and the other 20% is UPMC Mercy. I think there's maybe 1,000 people total that live in the Bluff outside of those 2 buildings or those 2 campuses. So like we own an entire neighborhood. And it was an affluent neighborhood at that. We own an entire formerly affluent neighborhood in downtown Pittsburgh. Yeah. We embody privilege.
And so what's a positive thing you can do in light of this privilege? Acknowledge privilege. You say, oh, well, acknowledging it doesn't do anything. Yes, it does. Acknowledging the realities of your situation inherently empowers your own perception of your situation. What does that mean? If you acknowledge the reality of having privilege, of owning basically what used to be an incredibly prosperous neighborhood, that can number one, inspire you to make use of that power. You shouldn't feel guilty about being born into privilege unless you're not doing anything with that privilege. So for example, if you have the power, if you have the ability to donate to nonprofits, if you have the choice between supporting Amazon and supporting a local Black-owned business, if you choose the easy route because it's the easy route, that's when you should be feeling guilty about your privilege. Whereas if you have the privilege and you use that privilege and if you use that power responsibly, Spider-Man, that is when sure, don't ever let that feeling of guilt escape you, because it drives you to keep on making the right decision.
Mhm.
But that is when, from a sort of like a, a big thought moral standpoint, that it is okay. And
Mhm.
that's fine. And you have to, that is just something that you need to constantly be keeping in the back of your head. Yes, Duquesne is an incredibly privileged school. Yes, we are incredibly privileged to be able to afford that school and to be able to attend that school, which means it is our duty to make use of our privilege, to make use of the platform that we have been granted by Duquesne.
And let's just make it clear that it is very, very important to realize and internalize and, notice your privilege, but that's not nearly enough. That's the first
no.
step. The
That's
first
literally
step
the first step.
is noticing your own privilege. The rest of the steps are doing something with that privilege.
Exactly.
So, I mean, like, that's the reason that I am studying political science, because I am a rich, straight, white, cis male. I am pretty much as privileged as you can get without being Anglo-Saxon.
Hey.
But like, I check 90% of the boxes on privilege at least. And I want to use that privilege that I've been given to make it so that no one is privileged any more than anyone else is. That I shouldn't be lucky to be white. I should just be, a white American. I should be lucky to be white just in the same way and just as much as anyone's lucky to be black. But right now, I do not face hardships that any other skin color faces in America, or people of different skin colors, or people of different income, or people of different gender, or people of different gender identity, or anyone else faces in America. And I want to do something about that. That's why I'm studying political science, because and again, this is not about me. This is about making a systemic change. And if systemic change happens without me, all for the better. But like, something needs to happen, and something needs to happen now. And the only way something will happen now is if people who have privilege and if people with privilege in positions of power do something with their privilege. So please do something with your privilege.
And
do anything with your privilege. That's better than nothing. And do as much as you can with your privilege.
If you are sitting at home and unemployed, like statistically a lot of people are right now, you have time. That's what you have to give. Time is money, literally. You can give your time to a protest. You can give your time, you can volunteer your time to support people.
You can support
White
protests
people,
even if you don't want to go to protests. Give water bottles, give snacks, give goggles. Goggles are so important.
Oh my gosh.
Give to protests if you don't feel safe going or don't want to go. Do something, even if it's just sharing a ton of information on social media. That is something huge you can do, because you can help educate other people and help them realize their own privilege as well.
Exactly. If you, let's say, don't have time because you are an essential worker and you're being stretched to your limit right now in the pandemic, you are receiving an income for your time. So you can donate your income. You can make donations to bail funds. You can sponsor actual, official sources of information that, help inform people.
And let me just say really quickly, bail funds are super, super important, because bail is incredibly immoral.
Oh my God.
Only two countries in the entire world have cash bail, and it's the United States and the Philippines, who are not necessarily known for the great civil rights. They shoot anyone that does drugs. Cash bail makes it so that a rich person doesn't have to stay in jail when a poor person would for the same exact crime.
Yep.
It is in direct violation of the 14th Amendment. And just like, think about it. If you and a billionaire and Jeff Bezos were both arrested for, let's say dealing marijuana, they post a $1 million bail, because a lot of times bails do not fit the severity of the crime. Bezos, easy. That's a fraction of a second of income for him. But that's your entire life earnings. Typically, the average American earns about $2 million in their entire lifetime. So you are stuck in jail where you cannot work and you cannot make money. So when poor people are already disproportionately arrested for crimes that are not disproportionately committed by them, they are being further disenfranchised because they are not able to afford bail, or if they are, it's putting them in an even worse economic situation. So please, if you can, donate to bail funds, help overturn this incredibly unjust system that we have, or at least mitigate the problem. Because what bail funds will do is pro bono pay that bail, because at the very end, if they show up to court, they get that money back, and that's it. It's a charity that helps poor people not stay poor.
Exactly. And in that sense, in the link of the description of this episode, we will be linking to bail funds so that you can donate to funds all across the country. I believe the Minneapolis Bail Fund has been maxed out, which is awesome.
Minneapolis Bail Fund is asking for people to donate elsewhere because they raised like $20 million in a week or something amazing like that. But I think they are also like moving their donations, which they don't donate to the Minneapolis Bail Fund because they have said that they don't want any more donations at the time.
Atlanta, St. Louis, Ferguson.
Yeah, anywhere where there are major protests happening need bail funds, because a lot of protesters are being arrested for protesting. One of our First Amendment rights.
And guess what? Protesters. I mean, I don't want to cast aspersions or anything, but look, we're in a recession right now. A lot of people have lost their jobs. Protesters are people who have maybe not money to donate, but have time to donate, as I said earlier. So protesters are likely, I don't know if this is true. I mean, protesters may be unemployed.
Yeah.
A lot of protesters may be unemployed. And
when a majority of Americans live paycheck to paycheck, you do not have that money to let you out of bail for being arrested for not a crime, but you're still going to be in jail for maybe up to a week because they need to process all the arrests that they're making.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Help get people out of zip ties.
Get people out of zip ties, get people out of jail, and get people out of not realizing their privilege.
In addition, if you are watching this and saying, this is a lot of information coming at me, and I want to, and before spending money or before going to a protest or something, I want to inform myself more, we will also be linking to a few books that are definitely worth reading.
Yeah.
Books, by the way, and this will be a beautiful twist of irony, that we were specifically told to read by Duquesne's professors to inform us about systemic injustices and systemic racism. Yeah, so just let the soldiers go down a little bit.
President Gormley, please say that Black Lives Matter.
Please.
Please say that police were involved in the killing of George Floyd. Please commit some resources outside of what you already had in place. Right now, all that's been done is lip service and nothing new. So please do something. With that said, it is now just about noon on this Friday noon.
Friday at noon. Our intro and outro music is by Paul Abrams and Rock Solid Panda and has been produced by Elise Duda.
You can find a recording of this podcast and any of our others on our YouTube, our Spotify, our SoundCloud, our iTunes, our Google Play Store, or anywhere else you find your podcasts that you love. Make sure to follow us on all of our social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, so you can stay updated on any of our upcoming topics, guests, airtimes, and anything else you might see.
We welcome your comments, your feedback, your suggestions. And as always, have a good Friday, stay safe, and have a great weekend.